All right, this is the ad hoc walkability subcommittee for the Sustainability Commission. It is October 19th, that is 4:37 p.m. And we have Jim Flanagan and Jennifer Futterman on from the commission. We have Dan DeGarmo and Pat Tallarico on from the city. And we are waiting for a couple more people, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I sent around today a few documents that the consultant had shared with me just last week. And so I wanted to just walk you through those, see if you had any questions or comments, and then kind of talk about where we're at and next steps. So let me do a little screen sharing. So many things to choose from. All right, share that. Okay, so this is not in any particular order, but this first one is like a press release that we would send out as soon as the project really gets going. And this is really to invite the public to weigh in on what they've seen in terms of pedestrian opportunities and challenges. And those links, I think, do work. And so they've included two things in there. One is a survey, just a questionnaire about, it asks people for some demographic information about who they are and how often they kind of walk in the city and that kind of thing, and how they walk. And then it asks them to talk about their experience a little bit. And then there's a mapping tool, which is kind of cool, that they can actually just point to a map and open the map and point to it, an area, and say, here's a problem or something like that. So that people have two kind of ways that they can communicate with us in terms of pedestrian challenges or opportunities. And again, those will go out when the committee starts to meet. But more importantly, they have, well, I'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, so that's one way that we're going to engage the public in this process and give them an opportunity to share their thoughts and concerns. The other thing that we're doing with them, and I'm going to skip down to this one. Yeah. One of the things that they are doing, which will be part of their products for the first Community Advisory Committee meeting, is to share the priorities and to list out the current projects that people have identified, or I don't know, problem spots that people have identified, and try to kind of associate them with a particular priority category. So in other words, what they did was they went through a lot of our documents, like the sustainability plan, the general plan, and things like that. And what they did was they pulled out language that had something to do with pedestrian safety or mobility or circulation, things like that. And so anyway, so these are all kind of existing language that we've had out there. And so they pulled it together into a set of priorities that they hope to go through initially with the Community Advisory Committee. So that'll be one of the first topics of their conversation. And includes that mobility is a priority, linkages, so connecting to various things, sustainability, and then economy and city identity. So again, you can see that because these are pulled from other sorts of places, they look a little strange, but I'm not sure if they're going to modify them or just point them out to say that here are the things that we have said about mobility and circulation and things like that. So, but anyway, when they go through the projects that people have identified so far, what they're going to do is kind of list these across the top and say, you know, this project would address sustainability because it's kind of oriented towards pedestrians and bikers, and it would enhance mobility because it facilitates traffic or something like that. So anyway, so they'll do that whenever they kind of present out the current projects. So happy to answer any questions you guys have on these things, the priorities. The one priority that they called out that they weren't too sure about was the city identity priority. And this is one that appears in the general plan and is kind of important for us as a city, I think. And so they don't normally have that as part of the priorities that they usually list for projects. But again, since they saw it as in the general plan priorities, and they felt like it was kind of important for the Palm Springs area, that they included that. So anyway, so that's where we are. And I told them that the general plan language is changing. So they're gonna make sure that this is updated with the most current language. So any questions about the priorities? And again, yeah.
About the priorities, or about the master plan doc, the thing that you sent out, or both?
So this is the priorities right now.
Okay.
All right.
Questions. I think it's really good though.
Yeah, so I think they're good. I think they're fine. I wanted to make sure that they don't spin their wheels on this. Like, I don't want them renegotiating existing language with the Community Advisory Committee. I just want them to, share these to say, here's kind of what we've talked about. And so things to keep in mind as we go forward. And I think these are kind of good because it's about, moving around the city. It's about linking various parts of the city. It's about making sure that things are sustainable and promote economic growth and promote our identity, really. So I think that's a simple set of priorities that people can get on board.
I do have one question about the bike. So yeah, I'm confused. I mean, it looks to me like it's just about pedestrians, but I see in the priorities that we do explicitly say bikes, and then and mobility and linkages and a couple other places. Right. Is this really a pedestrian thing, or is it a bike thing, or is it both?
So it is predominantly a pedestrian thing, but I think there is some recognition that it links up to other modes of transportation, and most notably sustainable transportation. So things like biking and stuff like that. So what we did when we talked with them initially was that very often challenges related to biking are also related to challenges with walking. So there is some overlap in terms of the problem areas that people have seen and noted. So for example, in the data that they've collected, they've included kind of accident data, and it includes bike accidents too. So there is some connection to that, but again, it's not. We're not developing a new bike system or anything like that. I think it's really more safety related, and if there is overlap with biking, then I think they're trying to note that. So
okay, it just seems a little confusing because you don't read that in the intro letter, you don't read that in the survey, you don't read that, but later on in the body you read that. Right. Maybe we should have what you just said, saying this is primarily about pedestrian. There is overlap, and in situations where there's overlap, please feel free to chime in how this may affect bicycles as well, or something, just so it's not, you're not left to guess.
Right, that's a good point. And I think the other thing, we did actually explicitly or intentionally invite people from the biking community too. So
yeah, I saw a couple of them.
Yeah, so okay, that's a good point though, and we should I think be clearer about what this set of priorities is. So okay, all right, good. And let me just make sure.
That actually makes sense also with the safe routes to school, because if kids could be biking to school as well.
Right, exactly. So I think that it comes in on that element too. So and actually that's a good point to bring up here, is that when we started this, there was a little bit of confusion about the relationship between, hi Grant, welcome. There was a bit of confusion between the relationship between the pedestrian safety master plan and the Safe Routes to School plan. And so I think we worked that out with them. They had to change a little bit of their scope in the contract, but basically it's both things. And I agree, Jennifer, there's probably more of a connection, again, related to biking and getting kids to school as well. But anyway, so they'll address that most likely in the Safe Routes to School piece.
And
yep.
And as the safe part, as the school part of it is in this, I'm curious, do kids even walk to school anymore? I mean, that was the only way we ever got to school, but it seems to me like rarely do I see an unattended child at school, going to school anymore. They all get driven. Is that part of this at all? Maybe that's a bigger question.
Well, so I think that it happens. I feel like it is more infrequent here. Because it seems like people are coming from maybe a little further away, but there is some of that happens. Like I've seen it at Catherine Finchy, that's up near Ruth Hardy. And
okay.
I've seen it at the other school, the one that's down here off of Mesquite. And even if it's not necessarily that they're walking to and from school, there's a lot of pedestrian activity around the school. And when they come and go, they might be parked down the street and they're walking to their cars too. And that's what I noticed a lot with the school that's on Mesquite, is that people were parked, 2 or 3 blocks away. And so there was a lot of crossing of the street in places that they really shouldn't be crossing, and, not a lot of good signage there either. So I think it'll take that into account from a bigger picture, longer walking to school versus also the short walk.
Thank you.
And the other thing I've noticed too is that I think it happens a lot more frequently at the high school. So of course kids are older, and so they tend to walk more, and I've seen a lot more walkers there, and even if it's just going across the street to the bus stop. So.
Or down the street, the store,
down the street, yes.
something like that, or
yeah. So, okay. So then the next thing that's included in here is it's their draft presentation basically that they're going to use for the first Community Advisory Committee meeting, and this is similar to the presentation that they made to the 1PS group when was that? September. And so it'll provide some context for people, give people opportunity to introduce themselves, talk about expectations and their roles, and then talk about kind of the overall context of the project and kind of where it might fit into these other plans. And so they'll talk about the goals and the priorities, and actually I think this should probably be priorities instead of goals, but they'll go through those with the group. And again, I think the intent here is not to dwell on them, but to really just say, here are some of the things that you guys have already identified in terms of priorities and pedestrian safety. And then they're going to get into existing conditions. And this is really an important piece of context setting, because it provides some information about kind of maybe what the pedestrian priorities are. And so it goes through the community characteristics, what our infrastructure looks like, and talks a little bit about the safe routes to school. So identifies some of the schools and kind of the zones where we're talking about in terms of pedestrian activity. And then talks a little bit about land use, but then it also starts to get into the collision data. So they'll share some of the hotspot data that they've collected, and so to maybe talk about that in terms of the overlap in terms of the other pieces of data and information that we've got. And then talk about the surveys that, again, that we developed, as well as the public workshops that they're going to conduct through the life of the project. And then interviews, most likely with school-related folks. I think we're going to do more focus groupy kind of stuff with the school-related projects. And then this is the examples from their the tools, the links that I shared earlier. And then here's their timeline. So they've moved the first CAC meeting back to November. And then we'll probably have a couple of meetings and then a workshop, and then another meeting and a workshop, and then probably a final meeting before we finalize the plan. So the goal is to get it done by kind of the May-June timeframe. Let's see, what's the other thing? So the thing that's not included in here yet is the list of existing projects or suggested projects. So what they've done is we've gotten from our engineering folks the list of all of the current projects, I guess they're not really projects, but they're suggested projects or complaints that people have provided to us. So problem areas like the curve down at Palm Canyon and that kind of thing. So they've collected those and have a list of those, and that'll be a starting point for the group's discussion about potential projects and opportunities for enhancing safety. So so we're not starting at zero with this. We're really starting at what we know already, and then looking for additional input and advice from folks that are on the committee. Like I said, the letters have started to go out to the CAC members, and we got at least one enthusiastic yes from the guy that runs PS Cares, because they actually do a lot of public safety work. So so they're all over this, and so they are going to participate. And other than that, I haven't heard anything yet. So so anyway, that went out I think late last week. So so I think we'll just start to hear from people now.
Those went out electronically?
They did, I think, go out electronically. They set up a new email box.
Okay.
And the PS pedestrian plan at gmail.com so that they could collect responses from people or get input from people at their email box. So they've done that.
And what is PS Cares?
PS Cares is, they are related to Volunteer PS. And I'm not sure exactly what the connection is, but they are a group that has focused mostly on bike safety in the past. So they'll run like little bike safety workshops with the police, and they give out helmets, and they really wanted to have this big campaign to have people wear vests while riding a bike. So I don't exactly know who it was, who's all involved in it, but Volunteer PS is a big organization, but PS Cares, I think, is a really small subset of that. And they had approached me a while ago about doing some work with us. And then it sort of faded. And then I hadn't heard from them in a while, certainly before COVID started. So, so anyway, but they're still out there and still interested, and they're on our list. So, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So they'll have some good insights. And other than that, I think that's about all we covered in our last meeting with them. And let me just see if I've got anything else I can show you.
Hey, Patrick, remind me who the vendor is on this, and are they local or are they Riverside?
Is KO, the vendor is KOA, the consultant's KOA.
Okay.
And they are somewhat local. I think they're towards the coast somewhere. But they're
Southern
like,
California.
but they're not that far though. They're like an hour away, I think.
Okay.
And they have done a lot of work here in Palm Springs. And one of their team members in particular, Leslie Scott, who's doing their outreach and facilitation work, she's been involved in a few projects here. So they're definitely familiar with the area.
Have they done any similar projects where there's a final product that we can look at, or is that?
Yeah, actually, I'll ask them to post that. Let me see if they've posted that.
It's always interesting to see what some of our other cities are doing.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think they've ever shared one online with us. They've just showed it to me. So I'll ask them to share it, pick a couple of examples and share it with us, because the one that they showed me that was a Safe Routes to School plan was actually really good. It was very concise. It had just some sort of problem areas, and then it had kind of potential projects and just some other information about the area and the area around the school. So, so yeah, I'll ask them to share that with us.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
They're located in Orange.
Oh,
Orange.
okay.
Yeah.
And La Quinta as well.
Yeah, they have some people out there, I think. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one more.
Yeah.
So I came up with this, I made it just to scribble down a couple of ideas that I wanted to see for safety going forward. And my list quickly went to 11.
Okay.
So do I just hang on to this and submit it later, or just keep an eye on it, or can I mail it to you, or what can I do with it?
You should mail it to
The group? No, I mean, they're just off the top of just off the cuff, and some of them are general and some of them are very specific. And
yeah, so the things that we've gotten so far have been very specific. So
yeah.
they're like, install pedestrian crosswalk at, at the corner of blah. So it would be interesting to take a look at your list and compare it to that list and to see if there's overlap.
And nothing I'm married to except for the eliminating of the buttons. But all the rest of them are just suggestions. So
eliminating the what?
The bag buttons.
In
the downtown business district.
Right.
Well, I could send it to you and Daniel, and you can decide if you want what to do with it. But it's pretty informal stuff. I don't know if that would that's legal or.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you guys are, I can't remember if you are all on the community advisory committee or if there's a subset of you on there.
Yeah, that's actually something I was going to ask.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe you had covered it before I joined. Sorry, I was late. But
yeah,
I'm kind of curious what our role as a subcommittee, as it were, is going to be going forward.
Right.
Because we don't fall under that Citizens Advisory Committee
right
subset.
But we do fall under the Brown Act, right?
Right. So the Sustainability Commission has a couple of spots on the Community Advisory Committee, and I think the thought there was that it would include Roy, because Roy is a connection to the 1PS work that was going on with regard to pedestrian safety and crosswalks. And then I think we were going to have one representative of this subcommittee on there. And I think Grant, I put your name down there. but that doesn't mean that you guys could not necessarily, we couldn't necessarily add you. And so let me ask them about that a little bit more and see how we want to make that connection, because I would like for there to be, I mean, it would be nice to have you guys kind of come back to the full commission to, if there's information that needs to be shared with them, to kind of make that connection, and for you guys to report out to them about what the community is saying, and to also identify if there are any other sustainability related activities that we would want to take on related to what might come out of this. So in other words, one of the things they're talking about is shade, and this came up in the planning, general plan discussion too, about shading walkways. And so that could be something that, again, comes back from this group and goes to the full commission, and we figure out what to do with that, and that kind of thing. So anyway, so I think that it's more of a connective tissue sort of thing, and but we definitely want to have a couple of you at the table. So so I think we wanted to do that without overwhelming the group. So that was our concern, is if we had, you know, we had 4 of you guys on there, and then you know, the committee was a total of 12 people or something, then that seemed a little weird.
Jim, were you appointed to the Sustainability Commission?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been on the commission for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not married to being on this group. I mean, I think having you do it is fine by me. I don't need to.
Well, I'm not on the commission though, so I that's where I was a little confused, because I'm kind of in this limbo.
Right. So
Yeah.
I specifically had them designate the Sustainability Commission subcommittee. So so I think that's what I wanted to make sure that we did, was to make sure that it was open to any of the subcommittee members. So so you as a member of the subcommittee could certainly participate.
I see.
Yeah. And what else?
That makes sense to me. I mean, Grant's citizen on the Citizen Advisory Committee. We're just kind of like a bridge point or something, so we can kind of stay involved through Grant.
Right.
That works.
Yeah, sorry, I just feel like I didn't do my homework for this meeting.
No, that's okay. It's been, like I said at the beginning, I mean, it's been very quiet because I actually didn't hear from them after the 1PS meeting in September until like last week. So so it's been sort of that.
Well, let's wait and see what the response is too. I mean, if you only get 3 people, then maybe the question may be different than if you get 10 really great people off the bat. Then we'll stick with just having 1 and doing it like a pivot table kind of thing. So let's see what we got.
Right. Okay. Let's see.
But it's not like, I'm also on the general plan update committee, steering committee, whatever it's called. And can't keep track of all these things.
Right.
And that one has representatives from each district.
Right.
Now, this Citizens Advisory Committee is not structured like that, correct?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to have representation from each part of the city.
Well, so that's a really good question. So
yeah, it is a good question.
At the last council meeting, there was some rumbling about, not really rumbling, but a suggestion that the commissions should be more conscious of having representation from each of the districts. And there was also that feedback when it came to the general plan update, I think, too, to make sure that we were engaging with the different districts. And so that might.
Yeah, because for the general plan steering committee, I'm specifically there as a representative of District 2.
Got it.
But there are other non-district representatives as well.
Right. So this,
And I just couldn't remember looking at the information for this Citizens Advisory Committee if it had a requirement for certain participants from whatever organizations or districts or what.
right. So I think that that was my vision where 1PS might come into play, is that if we were to get a representative, like 4 representative or 5, how many districts are there? 5, 4, 4, 5.
There are at least 4.
5 districts.
5 districts. That's what I thought. So we had,
5 people.
and this was
Thanks, Dan.
right. So this was our sort of dilemma with the list, was I wanted to actually have like 4 or 5 members from 1PS, but you know, that ends up being a committee of like 20 some people. So
Yeah.
so I think what we did was just started with like Kathy Cohn and Don Barrett, and what I suggested is that we work with them to figure out who from 1PS we should engage. And I think it sort of makes sense to have 1 rep from each district, which would be a nice way to kind of cover those bases. Because otherwise it's all these other groups. So it's like the PTA and the Chamber of Commerce and Main Street Merchants and front runners and all that kind of stuff. So so it's not really community specific or neighborhood specific. So
choices.
yes, exactly. So I think, well, I'll ask them, I'll check in with them this week to find out how the responses are coming and to see if they're getting any feedback from people saying, oh no, this isn't for me, or something like that. So.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And one thing that I like to remember, I've been really impressed with the materials that KOA has provided so far.
Yep.
I do think of them as an engineering firm.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to keep that in mind as things develop too.
Right. One of the things I did mention to them on my last call was that in addition to just looking at like the problem areas that we have, is that we also need to look at kind of future opportunities and things like that. Because I told them about, for example, the downtown park. That's going to be a big draw, and that's going to generate a lot of pedestrian traffic in that downtown area, maybe slightly different than what we have now. You know, the arena was canceled, so that is sort of taken off the table for now, at least. And so that was going to be a big one. But again, looking at the new cultural center to see, and I've heard talk that, you know, people wanted to do like some sort of a cultural walkway or connector route or something like that, that maybe takes you from the museum over to the Tribal Cultural Center to, you know, some other places in town that are significant. So so I asked them to think about and maybe generate some conversation around those kinds of things too, to say what's the, you know, the pedestrian potential essentially. So so if there was some stuff that may be in the works.
And what you're talking about, supposed to go through the town and country.
Yeah, yeah, they were talking about doing it.
Evidently, they're starting to work on that now.
Are they? Good. So anyway, so hopefully there will be more folks that are kind of more knowledgeable about that.
Similar to that, Patrick, I thought that a good example and analogy to that is the bike path maps that we have. So on those, there's 2 things. There's bike paths and where they go, and then there are bike routes. They're a fully connected route that you could take purely for exercise or enjoyment. Mm-hmm. And I know in Portland they have some green trail paths. They're a loop. It's a 1 hour walk, a 2 hour walk, or a 3 hour walk.
Right.
You know, rather than fixing things, I like that idea because it looks at, you know, what can we build that's going to get people out and walking, even if it's for exercise or for something to do kind of thing. So
Yeah, and I think people actually may have some good insights about that now, having gone through COVID, because so many people were walking.
Yeah, that's all there is.
Yeah, it's kind of all there is. So, so yeah, I'm hopeful that we generate some good conversation around that. All right, so I will look for some examples of products. We'll follow up with them on the invites. And talk to them about district representation. All right, super. Anything else? All right.
Maybe something non-pedestrian plan related. I got some sort of notification that there were some openings on the Sustainability Commission. So I was curious who's no longer on the commission.
So we have, let's see, T. Santora left, and we did not replace him. That was a little later, or sometime last year. Yeah, and then
John Goins.
John Goins was the other one that left not too long ago, and his position hasn't been filled yet. And then David Friedman is sort of on the downhill. So he's got like another maybe year or so.
No, he's gone at the end of December.
No, he's got I think a 1.5 year extension that he can do, or a year after December. I think the extension to December was 6 months, and then I think he may have another year after that.
So he's not being termed out.
He is not technically being termed out. No.
Mm.
So anyway, so that's our current lineup. So yeah. And to kind of make sure that we got the word, that's the first time we've ever done that, I think. And we wanted to just get the word out to people, just to see what kind of response we get. So I know we've gotten a few already, but we want to make sure that we've got a good pool to pull from, or at least the council has a good pool to pull from. So. Yeah.
What happened to that one young guy that was shadowing all the meetings? Josh or something? I remember he was excited.
Jace.
Yeah. He's on the list.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, he's still around.
Yep, he is. So he was broadcasting from Denver or Colorado a couple weeks ago, but I think he's back.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. And we'll talk again tomorrow.
All right, guys. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks for the update.